Alice, you don't build legacies with code and keyboards. You build them with real achievements, like saving lives, leading firms, making names people actually recognize. You're not a disappointment because you failed. You're a disappointment because you settled for being forgettable. My father's words felt like a slap across the face. Right there in a room glowing with candlelight and filled with praise meant entirely for my brother. Here, in the very house I grew up in, who among us was made to believe that silence was humility? That staying in the background was some noble choice? If you've ever bowed your head just to avoid being dismissed, ever dimmed your own light because no one wanted to see it, then this story is for you. Here, we don't just hear the criticism. We turn it into fuel. The silverware clicked like a metronome as Linda Harper rearranged the table setting. Again. Across the table, Dad scrolled through his phone with the kind of surgical focus he was famous for. Ethan, of course, had his elbows on the table, laughing at some story only he found funny. I cleared my throat. So, at school, we launched the new student portal today. I built the whole back end over summer. We're already seeing 40% faster load times. Silence. Then, Dad didn't even look up. That's not a career. That's what bored kids do with too much Wi-Fi. I swallowed, willing my fork not to tremble in my hand. It was picked up by the district's IT head. He wants me to... Did you tell him your GPA? Mom cut in sharply. Because colleges won't care how fast a login page loads if you can't keep a 4.0. Ethan took a bite of his steak, glancing at me as if waiting for me to cry or fight back. But I did neither. I smiled, small and fixed. He wiped his mouth, then offered, "My mentor at Mayo says they're looking at expanding their summer program to high school juniors. I might get in early." Of course. Mom's face softened instantly. "That's incredible, Ethan. That would look amazing on your pre-med application." I watched the flickering candlelight play off the awards that lined the built-in shelves behind them. Dad's plaques, Ethan's science fair medals, Mom's framed bar certification. Nothing of mine. Not even my letter from the State Computing Club. I'd stopped hanging those up years ago. I just thought... I tried one last time. Maybe next month I could attend... Oh? Mom interrupted. "Do you have something scheduled? Because we're throwing Ethan a celebration dinner that weekend. It'll be a big deal. Alumni from Harvard, Mayo, family from both sides. You'll help with the setup, of course." Of course. I pushed the chocolate mousse on my plate to the side. The spoon left a neat trail through the ganache, but I didn't taste it. I nodded, excused myself, and climbed the stairs slowly, each step pulling me out of their world and back into mine. My room was dim but alive. 3 monitors glowed softly, the walls around them plastered with sticky notes, printouts, sketches of UI layouts, and strings of pseudocode. I dropped into my chair, the leather cracked and worn but perfectly molded to my back. I opened my browser, typed in the URL I'd saved earlier, and navigated to the Illinois State Coding Championship page. The registration form blinked back at me. First name, last name, school. I typed quickly, methodically, like it was muscle memory. It asked for a preferred final location. Northern region, Highland Park High. Same date as Ethan's internship celebration. I hesitated, for less than a breath. Then I clicked submit. A white screen appeared. "Congratulations. You are registered for the 2009 Illinois State Coding Championship Regionals." I hit Control-P. The printer in the corner whirred to life, spitting out a clean confirmation email. I waited, watching it emerge like a secret slipping into daylight. I walked over, took the sheet, and opened the bottom drawer of my desk. Behind a faded folder labeled "Plans That Don't Require Applause," I tucked it in and closed the drawer, softly, deliberately. My revolution didn't start in a boardroom. It started in a freezing garage with duct-taped extension cords and 2 folding chairs. The space smelled like rust, insulation foam, and burnt coffee. Jenna's garage had no insulation, no heat, and definitely no Wi-Fi that didn't drop every 20 minutes. But it had a whiteboard, a leaky mini fridge, and something far rarer: purpose. I hunched over my laptop, watching lines of code crawl across the screen like they had somewhere urgent to be. Across from me, Jenna paced in mismatched socks, waving a marker like a conductor. "Think about it," she said. "The nurse has 30 seconds to decide. If there's a flag in the patient's chart, like allergy history or missing consent, they need to know immediately." I nodded. "So, instant alert escalation, color-coded layered access. Nurse sees one thing, surgeon sees more." Her eyes lit up. "Exactly. Bridge the gap. No more waiting for faxes or playing tag over pagers." I'd met Jenna during a UI/UX symposium the year before. She was the first person I'd met who didn't flinch when I tore apart a system's architecture. She just asked, "Want to fix it together?" Tonight, her hands were blue from the cold. Mine were shaking from too much caffeine. But our vision? Clearer than ever. My parents thought I was wasting time. Jenna's parents brought us grilled cheese sandwiches and asked what we were building. That night, as her mom knocked gently and left a tray on the steps, I felt the ache of something I hadn't known I missed: encouragement without agenda. By midnight, we had the MVP mapped out: a HIPAA-compliant platform that could connect disparate healthcare systems in under 5 seconds, with real-time alerts and adaptive UI. We called it NextBridge, a nod to building the missing link in critical care. I insisted on one thing from the start. "My name doesn't go on any press," I told her. "Just list A. Harper, or leave it blank." Jenna blinked. "You built the back end, the infrastructure, the security layers." "I don't want them knowing," I said, and she didn't need to ask who them was. She shrugged, smiled. "Okay, we'll do it your way." A week later, we were huddled in the student cafe at Illinois Tech, sipping terrible vending machine cocoa, uploading our entry video for the Chicago Startup Ignite competition. Naomi, my oldest friend, the only one who'd stayed in my life when everyone else disappeared, held the camera. "You know," Naomi said between takes, "if your parents ever saw this, they'd say it's a phase," I muttered, "and suggest I take a course in Excel." Naomi exhaled sharply but didn't push. She adjusted the focus, caught the glint in Jenna's eye as she pitched to the camera. I stood off screen, mouthing the script with her like a ghost. A month later, we were on stage. I don't remember the MC's name. I barely remember the color of the drapes or what the keynote speaker talked about. I just remember Jenna squeezing my hand before they announced us, and how my stomach dropped when the screen flashed. "Winner, NextBridge Health, $10,000 seed prize." She shoved the oversized check into my arms before I could react. I held it, stunned. Not because of the money, but because for the first time in my life, I felt like I existed outside of someone else's shadow. The applause wasn't for Ethan. The camera flashes weren't angled toward Dad's resume. And Mom? She hadn't seen a single second of this. Back at the garage, the check leaned against the wall, curling at the edges. Jenna was already sketching out plans for beta testing. Naomi was editing our new demo. I finally allowed myself to smile. Just a little. Then my phone buzzed. "Mom, Dad knows someone at Apple. Entry-level IT. Interested?" I stared at the screen. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I didn't reply. Not yet. Of all the people who could end up negotiating to buy my company, it had to be my brother's fiancée. The voicemail was short, clipped. My mother's voice, as always, sounded like it had someplace better to be. Labor Day weekend, Ethan's engagement dinner. Wear something appropriate. No, how are you? No, congratulations for the national rollout NextBridge had just secured with 2 major hospital systems. No indication that she even remembered I lived within the same time zone. Just an order. A date. A tone that implied I should be grateful to have been summoned. I played the message twice, then deleted it. My inbox chimed. Jenna had forwarded me Horizon Health's official acquisition offer, PDF attached. No fanfare in her subject line, just, take a look. Big numbers. I clicked. My eyes scanned the terms automatically. Equity retention, provisional buyout, projected phase-out of co-founder roles over 18 months. Then I saw the name at the bottom, Claire Morgan, Senior Director, Strategic Acquisitions, Horizon Health. My brain didn't process it right away. Claire Morgan. I knew that name. I'd heard it last week. A photo, a caption, something Ethan posted about our future Dr. Power couple. I opened LinkedIn, typed quickly. There she was. Blonde, polished, confident. Profile photo with a Harvard Medical School banner behind her. Engaged to Ethan Harper. The bio line read, casual as a grocery list. I sat back in my chair. The city lights of South Loop blinked behind the blinds like they were trying to keep a straight face. I dialed Naomi. She picked up on the first ring. I swear to God, if you don't believe in divine comedy after this... I didn't even let her finish. She's the one trying to buy us. There was silence on the other end. Then Naomi let out a long, slow whistle. The universe is literally serving you a moment. I'm not planning revenge, I said. You don't have to. Just show up. I laughed, low and bitter. It's not even about them anymore. I want it to be so undeniable that even they can't twist it, I once told Naomi. Then maybe I'll let them know. And this was the chance to do just that, without fireworks or monologues or dramatic speeches. Just presence. Presence that couldn't be ignored. Later that night, Jenna and I jumped on a video call. She had half a granola bar in her mouth and a spreadsheet open behind her. You okay? She asked, after I told her who Claire really was. Better than okay. This isn't a trap. It's leverage. I'll delay responding to the offer until after the weekend. Let's see how they play it, she said with a smirk. I nodded. Let's give them the full picture. Naomi and I met up the next day in Hyde Park at the same cafe we used to haunt back in our undergrad years. The barista recognized her. Me? Not so much. I handed her the ivory envelope when she arrived. Wedding dinner invite. She raised an eyebrow. Very shiny. Very gold. IRSPED. Her eyes widened. Wait, you're actually going? I stirred my coffee slowly. Yes? What will you wear? I looked her in the eye. No hesitation. I'll wear the truth. They can deal with it. That night, I pulled down the garment bag from my closet. It was black, clean-lined and hung with the sort of quiet dignity that didn't beg for approval. I unzipped it slowly, the soft rustle of fabric the only sound in the room. Elegant, unassuming, unforgettable. She didn't ask in front of everyone. She leaned in during the salad course and whispered, Are you the founder? The candlelight flickered against the wine glasses, refracting polite smiles and scripted laughter. The Harper table looked like a spread from a society column. Ethan glowing in his tailored suit. My parents rehearsed in their affection. Every fork raised with poise. I was seated at the end, close enough to be in the picture, far enough to be easily cropped. Ethan held court with practiced ease, launching into yet another story about his role in a research fellowship that could redefine telehealth protocols. He didn't seem to notice when I added a small clarification about latency rates in legacy systems, but someone did. Claire. Her eyes, hazel and hawkish, flicked toward me just a beat too long. Not suspicious. Curious. I returned her gaze with a half smile and a sip of water. Dinner glided from one curated course to the next. Wine refilled. Laughter swelled on cue. No one noticed the tremor building beneath the silverware. When the arugula and pear salad arrived, Claire leaned slightly across the linen-draped table. The others were distracted. Dad talking about a malpractice case he'd testified in, Mom chiming in with some firm gossip. Ethan was too busy being Ethan. Her voice was low, careful. Are you the founder? I didn't blink, just nodded. Once. She froze. Just for a moment. Then she sat back slowly, her posture immaculate, but the color drained from her face. I could almost see the mental math clicking behind her eyes. A. Harper, NextBridge. The company Horizon had just offered 7 figures for. The same company her fiancé's family never stopped dismissing. The silent sibling they thought did nothing with her time but play with gadgets. Claire excused herself before the entree arrived. No one paid her any mind. Ethan was too busy explaining blockchain to a Horizon colleague who definitely already knew what it was. My mother was adjusting a napkin fold, but I noticed Claire's hands as she stepped away. They were shaking. The filet mignon came and went. Polished plates disappeared like clockwork. I toyed with my fork, letting the moment stretch. Then came dessert, a blood orange tart with ginger cream. Claire returned, composed, unshaken on the outside. She clinked her spoon gently against her champagne glass. The room dimmed slightly as people turned toward her. "Hi," she began. "I know this is Ethan's night, and I'm so grateful to be part of this family." A chorus of polite ahs followed. "But tonight, I also want to raise a toast to something else." I felt the air thin around me. Naomi would have told me to breathe. Claire's eyes found mine. "To those who build quietly but build everything, some things don't need to be loud to be powerful." No one else seemed to catch it. My parents smiled in confusion. Ethan grinned like she was talking about him. I just lifted my glass. After the applause, as guests began shifting in their chairs, Claire walked past me, her perfume subtle, her voice quieter still. "Check your inbox tomorrow," she murmured. "I think it's time we talk, founder to founder." When the brunch invitation came, I knew it wasn't about mimosas. It was about damage control. The rooftop terrace in Gold Coast tried to look casual. String lights, low jazz, white cushions too pristine to sit on comfortably. But nothing about this meal was relaxed. The sky hung low and overcast, like even the weather knew this wasn't a celebration. I arrived precisely on time. Not early, not late. The table had already been claimed by my parents and Ethan, seated stiffly beneath a pergola. A single empty chair waited for me. There was no waiter in sight. Mom rose slightly. "Alice, sweetheart." I sat before she could perform the full routine. Dad cleared his throat. "Glad you could make it. We just thought, after everything last night, it might be good to talk." The word talk landed like a strategy memo. No mention of the toast. No mention of Claire. Just 3 people pretending this was brunch and not a stage summit. "You know," Mom started, stirring tea she hadn't sipped, "we always wanted you to be independent. Strong. Maybe we didn't say it enough, but we're proud." "Proud," I repeated softly. Ethan leaned forward, hands splayed awkwardly on the table. "Seriously, Alice, why didn't you say anything? We could have helped. Connections, capital. I mean, Claire had no idea either." I didn't answer him right away. I looked at my father, who'd been studying the city skyline like he was trying to escape through it. "You couldn't even see me," I finally said. "How could you help me build something invisible to you?" The words didn't rise. They fell, like a stone into still water. Ethan looked away. Mom clasped her hands. "Look, we understand now. We just didn't know how driven you were. But this could be a fresh start. We could merge some assets, make it a family venture. You'd have our full support." A beat. "I didn't build NextBridge," I said, "so you could rebrand me as your success story." Dad's fork tapped once. Accidentally or deliberately, I couldn't tell. "This isn't about rebranding," Mom tried, voice rising a fraction. "It's about realigning. We're a family." "No," I said. "You're a brand. I just never fit the logo." The silence after that was different. Not offended, not indignant, just pierced. Ethan tried again. "I'm sorry, I really am. I didn't realize—" I looked at him. Really looked. He wasn't malicious. He was just raised in a house where mirrors only faced one direction. Dad finally spoke. You know, Alice, a reputation takes decades to build and seconds to ruin. I gave a small nod. Funny how that works both ways. There was no dessert menu, no waitstaff with a check. Just three versions of discomfort across from me and one version of resolve inside. I stood. I'm not here for revenge, I said. I'm here to remind you that I was never gone. You just never looked. As I walked toward the elevator, my phone buzzed. Claire, let's finalize the proposal. And I'd like to invest in whatever you do next. You don't need a spotlight when you've built the stage. 3 months later, I stood at the side of the Horizon Health Auditorium, watching young girls in oversized t-shirts take seats with wide eyes and restless knees. Laptops flipped open like promises. Their voices were a hum of nervous excitement, the kind I used to carry quietly inside. Naomi moved briskly between rows, checking registration lists and power cords. Claire hovered by the side screen, adjusting her notes on a tablet. She caught my gaze and nodded once. Calm, certain, like this was always meant to happen. Ladies and future legends, Claire's voice rang out over the PA, bright and warm. Thank you for joining us for the first official CodeBridge workshop. Today isn't just about writing code. It's about rewriting stories. Your own. She turned to me with a smile that was invitation and recognition all at once. To begin, let me introduce someone who built not only this program, but the very bridge many of you will walk across in the years to come. Alice Harper. Applause rose like a tide. I walked to the podium with steady steps, the room narrowing to faces and lights and breath. My name is Alice, I began. And I used to think being invisible was safer than being underestimated. No dramatic pauses, just truth. I didn't have mentors growing up. I had obstacles, so I built around them. I built in silence, behind other people's expectations. But silence isn't absence. Sometimes it's the beginning of structure. I didn't mention my parents. I didn't mention what wasn't given. Instead, I talked about pathways, how to carve them when the ground is uneven, how to see yourself not as a missing piece, but the designer of a new blueprint. Claire nodded from the wings. Naomi smiled beside the tech table, cupping a walkie in her hand. And in the back row, Ethan stood, alone, hands in pockets, gaze fixed. He didn't look like the golden boy this time, just a man learning to listen. After the workshop, while the students clustered for snacks and selfies with Claire, Ethan approached. Not with fanfare, just quiet steps and a familiar frown. I was wrong, he said. I studied him. You weren't just wrong. You were loud about it. He looked down. But now, I added, silence suits you better. He nodded, and for once didn't try to reply. One girl, maybe 13, held back from the crowd. She stepped forward, eyes wide, clutching a spiral notebook. How did you know you were enough? She asked. I knelt slightly, so our eyes met. I didn't, I said gently. I just stopped waiting for someone else to say it first. She beamed, then turned back to the group, walking taller somehow. As the last laptop case zipped and chairs began scraping, I glanced at my phone. One new email. Subject: Forbes Women in Tech. Feature request body. We'd love to spotlight your story. Are you available for an interview next week? In a world that once refused to see her, she chose not to scream, not to beg, but to build. Quietly, precisely, deliberately. While others soaked in applause for paths paved before them, she took a shovel to the dirt and carved her own. Not to be noticed, but to exist on her own terms. And by the time they turned around, looking for someone to celebrate, the stage was no longer theirs. She had built it. For years, Alice Harper lived on the periphery of recognition, dismissed as a background character in her family's curated narrative. In their home, achievement was measured by titles, institutions, and polished dinner conversations that left no room for dissent. But some victories can't be held in trophies. Some brilliance can't be reduced to lines on a resume. And some daughters, when ignored long enough, stop asking for a seat at the table and start building their own halls. Her journey wasn't about revenge, it was about reclamation. She never sought to ruin them. She simply made sure she could no longer be erased. By letting her work speak louder than their words, she forced them into a truth they could no longer deny, that they were wrong. Not quietly wrong, but confidently, publicly, and repeatedly wrong. And in the end, it wasn't their regret that mattered. It was her refusal to let their blindness define her path. Justice, for her, did not come in the form of apologies or headlines. It came in the mentorship applications flooding her inbox from girls who saw themselves in her. It came in the quiet nods of former doubters, now silent in the back of crowded rooms. It came in the realization that building quietly is not the opposite of power. It is power, distilled. There is something uniquely powerful about those who win without seeking approval from those who doubted them. Alice never wanted to be their hero. She just wanted to live without apology. But in becoming the architect of her own future, she became a symbol for everyone who has ever been told to dim their light, to stay small, to play it safe. And perhaps that is the clearest justice of all. Not in seeing the guilty fall, but in knowing they no longer have the power to define who you are. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late. But once it is heard, it resonates through every corridor of power and silence. It leaves a mark. It rewrites the narrative. And most of all, it frees not only the one who endured, but everyone watching, silently wondering if they too can stand. This story is not just hers. It belongs to anyone who's been underestimated in rooms they helped build, to those who've been excluded from tables they would one day own, to the quiet minds whose brilliance is never loud but always lasting. When injustice is met with unwavering resolve, the verdict may take time, but it always arrives. And when it does, no spotlight is needed. Because some people were never waiting for permission to shine. They were just waiting for the world to look up. If Alice's story spoke to something deep inside you, if you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or like you had to earn your place in your own family, then don't just scroll past. Hit the like button, subscribe for more stories that speak truth in silence, and share this video with someone who needs to be reminded. You don't need their applause to be powerful. You just need to build anyway. And in the comments, take a moment to reflect. Comment 1 if you're still searching for the love or validation you never got from your parents. Comment 2 if you've been lucky enough to grow up in a family that made you feel safe, seen, and supported. Every number is a story, and every story deserves to be heard. Rachel, you keep showing up like you're still part of this family. Let me be clear. You're not a disappointment. You're a mistake we put up with out of obligation. You really think a new car or some startup makes you worth something? You've always been a shadow. Someone we tolerated, never someone we respected. That's what he said to my face, right there in front of everyone. Just when I thought I might finally be acknowledged. If you've ever been treated like a burden by your own family, like a mistake they had to endure instead of a person worthy of love, then stay. Because this story is for you. I hadn't meant to go. I'd said it at least 3 times to Taylor. Not this year, I told her, each time less convincing than the last. And yet, here I was. Underground parking lot, Tesla keycard still warm in my palm, the hum of the elevator behind me and a car in front of me so smooth, so quiet, it almost felt like it didn't belong to me. The paperwork was still crisp in the glove compartment. I hadn't even peeled off the protective film on the touchscreen. It was ridiculous. Ridiculous to think he'd notice, let alone care. But deep down, the version of me that still lived in age 14, when I brought home that math trophy, and Charles Everett had merely grunted, "First place is worth bragging about." That girl still believed maybe this gift would matter. Taylor's text lit up on my phone. You sure you want to go? I didn't answer. Instead, I slipped the envelope onto the passenger seat. A simple note on heavyweight paper. For Charles Everett, from the one you never mention. I pressed the car key inside the fold, sealed it, and let it rest like a confession. The drive to my father's house was short, but long enough to drown in memory. The Everett mansion hadn't changed. White pillars, immaculate hedges, and a driveway so polished it mocked anyone without perfection. I parked around the corner, always out of sight, always outside the frame. The maid was new. She blinked twice before speaking. Ms. Rachel? I smiled. Still me. She stepped aside. The scent of lilies lingered in the entryway.